Hi guys, good day. So this is a video of me gonna ride my own bike, a Honda CB650R, just after getting off a Honda CB500X. So if you want to see my review on the 500X, please check out this video here for a more comprehensive review. But however, this is a video where I'm gonna explain on whether this CB650R is an upgrade for you if you are an owner of a CB500, like an X for instance. Okay, in terms of noise, you can hear this is a 4-cylinder. If the choice of bikes that you buy is heavily influenced by the noise it makes, then this could be the bike for you. Okay boss, because the 500 is a twin, and for me 4-cylinder sounds better than an inline twin. So first place, those of you who were wondering what am I doing comparing a CB500X to this Honda CB650R, well, the fact is the 500X is very similar to the other 500 range, which are CBR 500R, the CB500F, and as well as the Rebel 500. So those of you who ride any of those variants of the 500 range can kind of relate this comparison. Overall, it was a great bike, but it doesn't do that. It doesn't do any of that nonsense. If let's say your target is to have a bike to go from A to B, and you're a grown up and you don't really want to hoon or anything, not interested in any of this, that is probably a bike for you. That bike doesn't like to scream, unlike this bike loves to scream. So first things first, talk about ergonomics. That bike had a slightly higher handlebar. Being an adventure, you're kind of more upright compared to this bike. Although this is a naked bike, you are still a little bit lean forward in terms of your riding position. Compared to the 500, this is a little bit more sporty in terms of your riding stance, and I feel that my knees bend a little bit more riding on this bike compared to the 500. If you want comfort, you want more upright position, the 500 is for you. But if you would like something sportier, then go for the 650. Has a slightly more sportier riding position. It's not huge difference. It's not like a big shock for you. Like for example, if you were to get on a super sport like a Panigale, that would be a totally different position. It's a totally different level of comfort in comparison. The meter cluster is the same, exactly the same. There's no difference about XR. It's not exactly the same because that bike doesn't come with traction control. This one does. So this bike also comes with traction control, which is also a neat little thing that the 500 does not have. And if you're like me, you bought the 500 without the ABS fitted onto it, this 650 comes with ABS. I'll make sure you get the one with the ABS fitted from the factory, as that is an extra additional safety feature which will help you in sticky situations. How about the engine? Let's talk about the engine. Obviously this 650 is a little bit more powerful, but if you're in town, this 650 has a little bit more usable power, as it likes to rev a little bit higher, but the 500 likes to live in the bottom end of the rev range. It's not a screamer. It's not happy screaming, but it does it if you want it to. The 500 is pretty smooth for a twin cylinder inline 2. It's probably as smooth as you can get from an inline 2-cylinder bike. But this 650 is just smoother overall. So in terms of smoothness, the 650 is smoother in general. Power wise, well, obviously this bike is a lot more powerful, but it's 90 horsepower, and it is a more highly strong engine compared to the 500, which is not a highly strong engine. Probably an underpowered 500 to beat the A2 restrictions that they have in Australia and Europe, for example. I believe it's Australia and Europe, that is. The size wise, this bike is a little bit bigger, but it doesn't feel that much bigger. It's not intimidating at all. So the 650 and the 500 are probably roughly around the same size, but the 650 is a little bit wider than the 500 from the tank, because it has to house 4 cylinders instead of just 2. In terms of brakes, obviously this bike is powered by radially mounted dual disc Nissin calipers, compared to the 500 single disc axially mounted Nissin calipers, and they're smaller calipers as well. But that doesn't mean it's not adequate. It's adequate enough for the 500, but compared to the 650, obviously it doesn't brake as hard as the 650. That's what I feel about the brakes. If you want to daily ride a bike, the 500X is an overall more comfortable bike, because the suspension is more plush. It handles bumps better than this bike does, probably because of the longer suspension and a different softer setup. If you want a sporty ride, sporty feeling on the bike, if that's what you're after, the 500 is not. It doesn't inspire confidence for you to attack corners. The undulations on the road can upset the balance of the bike, and if you brake a little bit too hard, it dives a little bit too much, in my opinion. If you press the brakes a little bit harder, then it will dive more than compared to my 650. You can see here, okay, I must check whether there's no car behind me. Whoa, see? But that's what you get from riding that kind of bike. It's a commuter adventure-ish bike. It's not a sports bike. Well, this 650 gives you a slightly more sporty feeling, but it's not intimidating, and it's not bone-rattling hard, but it's just a little bit firm. In terms of the buttons, the placement, they're exactly the same, with the exception of the traction control toggle, which you don't get on the 500X. Oh, see, the 500X would have handled those bumps better than this bike. But then again, if you're in the corner, if you're going hard inside a corner, I wouldn't want to be on a 500X. I guess there's advantages and disadvantages to that, and it depends all on what you want in the bike. Fuel consumption, I believe the 500X has better fuel consumption, but correct me if I'm wrong. When I owned my 500R, it did around 25 kilometers to the liter. This bike does probably 18 to 20 kilometers to the liter. That's just with my style of riding. I'm not an economical rider. If I see a long straight, I like to rev it out like this. So in terms of maneuverability, this bike probably it feels a tiny bit heavier compared to the CB500X, probably because one, it has thicker tires, and two, probably because it's heavy. I don't know, it probably weighs the same, but this bike feels a little bit less agile at lower speeds because it just feels a little bit heavier, to me at least. In terms of cost of ownership, I believe the 500 would cost less to own because it has less brake pads to replace. It probably requires less engine oil when you service the bike, but other than that, and probably because the tire size is different, the 500X uses 19-inch fronts, 17-inch rear with 160 width, whereas this bike uses 180 millimeter wide rear tire. the 180mm rear tire is a little bit more expensive compared to the 160, so that translates to more expensive tire for you to replace when it's due to be replaced. You have to replace a pair of brake pads instead of just one side of brake pads, and as well as brake discs when brake discs are worn. So that translates into higher ownership costs over the long run for the 650R compared to the 500X. So to really consider who would appreciate the CB650R coming from a CB500 range, probably those riders who want something a little bit sharper, something a little bit more focused, but not sacrificing too much comfort, because this bike, you can still take it on daily commutes, you can still take it for cruises, but it's just a little bit sharper in terms of its handling and characteristics, and the engine is a little bit more playful. So it depends on what your intention for your CB500X is. So let's say if you use your bike for a lot of touring, this might not be the next up bike for you, because the riding position is simply a bit sportier and could mean you will be feeling a little bit more drained by the end of your ride compared to if you were on the CB500X. Although the gear ratio for this bike is better suited for touring compared to the 500X. With regards to wind protection, you get none on this bike because it's a naked bike unless you put a fairing on it. But then again, you do have to live with the kind of harder suspension, which is can be quite jolting when you hit hard edge bumps on the road. On the CB500X, if you were to hit bumpy roads, it's much more forgiving. Well, what I mean is that on this CB650R, you feel a lot more of the road compared to the 500, because it's a bit sharper. It's not uncomfortable, it's just sharper. If you're an ADV rider, I don't recommend for you to upgrade to a CB650R unless you're willing to live with the lack of comfort due to the wind and the slightly firmer suspension setting. However, if you're a daily commuter and you're looking for a little bit more power, or you're looking to upgrade your bike and perhaps you like the look of the CB650, it's not gonna compromise your comfort in terms of riding in the city. Riding this bike in the city feels very similar to the CB500. So the 500 as well, like I said, if you to hit some highways on your daily commute to work, it's gonna have a stronger wind effect, and you're gonna be more exposed to wind and more rain, I guess, other elements of nature. If you want to upgrade to this bike for the reason of getting more comfort, it's not gonna give you more comfort, definitely, that's for sure. However, if you want to upgrade because of the looks, go ahead. If you're from a CB500F and you like the Honda build quality, you like the Honda feel of a bike, but you want a little bit more power, you want more refinement, you want to attack corners a little bit harder, yeah, go ahead. This is the right bike for you to upgrade to. The power difference is noticeable. I wouldn't say it's significant, but it is definitely more noticeable, and you will love revving the hell out of this bike. The top end is so nice. The grunt you get from revving this bike above 8,000 RPM will give you that sporty super bike feel. If you like to do some sporty spirited rides, you want a better bike, this bike is for you. Definitely upgrade as soon as you can. Upgrade. The 4-cylinder on this bike has more oomph compared to the 500. The higher quality suspension will also means you're more planted, more confident in taking corners. The better brakes on this bike will mean you stop better and you'll feel more confident, more planted as compared to if you were to be on the 500. So the verdict is different. It depends on what you do with your Honda CB five00 or Rebel 500. If you want to cruise, I don't know, this bike's pretty good for cruising as well, but sometimes it just wants to scream, so you kind of lose your sense of concentration there. You're supposed to cruise, but you're going a bit faster than the speed limit because you've lost yourself and you just kind of gone into the groove to really ride fast. For me, I never looked back to the CBR500R when I bought this bike. It is definitely a step up from the CBR500R, but that doesn't mean the CBR500R is a bad bike. That is a bike that offers quite a lot of fun at its price range. I think this is a great bike. I'm really glad that I am on this 650 right now, because even though this is the Thailand spec Honda, not the ones that are made in Japan, its build quality is better than a lot of the other brands. For me, I have experienced a few other bikes before I switch over from my 500 to my 650, and I feel like I really miss the Honda's build quality that I take for granted when I was on the 500. You didn't even think about little things like these gaps here. Why is this gap bigger than that gap on that side? Why is this part of the plastic a bit flimsy compared to the other parts of the body? You know, why is this screw a little bit different to this one? Things like that really matters for you, especially if you're living with this bike and if you are detail oriented. If you enjoy Honda's build quality and you want that familiarity in using a Honda where everything is at the same place and is easy for you, is very intuitive for you to ride, then this is the bike for you. Oh yeah, you get that as well. Loves to scream, and I love to make her scream. Okay guys, I hope that covers a lot of the areas that you would appreciate or you'd find useful about my views on whether the CB650R is an upgrade compared to the CB500X or the CB500 range. As usual, don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. Please click on the bell icon in order to not miss out on any of the contents, and most importantly, stay safe, ride safe, and have a great day. Bye bye.